The bailiff's voice echoed through the wood-paneled courtroom, thin and sharp as a blade. Asterisk, all rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Whittaker presiding. Asterisk, people shuffled to their feet, lawyers, tired parents, curious onlookers, who'd come to witness the spectacle of a scrawny 12-year-old boy standing trial for vandalism. The boy's name was Eli Carter. His oversized sweater hung off his bony shoulders, and one of his sneakers had a hole big enough that you could see the skin of his toe. He looked around the room with wide, anxious eyes that didn't dare meet anyone's gaze. Asterisk, Judge Whittaker, a tall man with a hawkish nose and a robe so black it seemed to drain the color out of the room, descended from his chamber. He glanced at the file in front of him, then back at Eli. His lips twisted into a smirk. Asterisk, so. He drawled, this is the boy who decided to deface the library mural. Asterisk, Eli swallowed and tried to speak, but nothing came out. His mother, sitting behind him in the gallery, pressed a crumpled tissue to her mouth. She'd been crying since dawn. Whittaker's gavel hit the block with a heavy thud. Tell me, young man, do you have any idea how much public property you destroyed, or were you too busy playing with your crayons to notice? Asterisk, a few people snickered. Eli flinched as though slapped. Asterisk, his lawyer, a young public defender named Miss Grayson, rose. She'd only met Eli that morning. Asterisk, Your Honor, she said carefully. With respect, Eli was not vandalizing the mural out of malice. Whittaker cut her off with a wave of his hand. Was expressing himself, I'm sure. Isn't that the fashionable excuse? He turned back to Eli, who was staring at the scuffed floor. Look at me when I'm speaking to you. Asterisk, slowly. Eli raised his head. There was something in his gaze, something the judge could not quite name. Not insolence, not defiance, a peculiar, bright stillness, like the eye of a storm. Asterisk, you think you're clever? The judge asked. Do you imagine you're some misunderstood genius? Let me disabuse you of that notion right now. You are a poor boy from nowhere with nothing, and if you don't learn to respect other people's property, you'll end up exactly where you belong on the streets. Asterisk, Eli blinked, and for the briefest moment, his lips parted as though he were about to speak. But then he closed them again, and the courtroom settled into a tense hush. Asterisk, Miss Grayson stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. Asterisk, Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to submit evidence showing that Eli's drawings were not graffiti, but an attempt to restore part of the mural that had been vandalized earlier. He had sketched a copy of the original design from library archives. I have them here. Asterisk, she passed a stack of papers to the bailiff. Whittaker rifled through them, brows knitting. Asterisk, he replicated this freehand. Asterisk, yes sir, she said, in under 2 hours. Asterisk, he stared at the sketches, remarkable, intricate renderings of the old mural in astonishing detail, shading and line work that looked as though it belonged in a museum, not in the hands of a boy who could barely afford a clean shirt. Asterisk, the judge set the papers aside. Suddenly uneasy. Asterisk, even if that were true, it doesn't excuse defacing property without permission. Eli's voice finally emerged, quiet but clear. They wouldn't let me help, he said. I asked the librarian, but she said it wasn't my place. I only wanted it to look the way it used to. A thin wave of murmurs swept the gallery. Whittaker glanced at him sharply. Asterisk, you expect me to believe you taught yourself to draw like this? Eli's cheeks flushed. I learned from library books and online videos. Sometimes I practiced in chalk on the sidewalks. My mom couldn't buy art supplies. Ms. Grayson laid a gentle hand on Eli's shoulder. If I may, Your Honor, Eli has an exceptional gift. He's never had a proper mentor or resources. All he's ever wanted was to create something beautiful. Asterisk, the judge leaned back, tapping his gavel against the bench. For the first time in a long while, he felt something crack the hard shell of his disdain, a small, reluctant curiosity. He turned to the gallery. Is the librarian present? Asterisk, an older woman in a cardigan raised her hand. Asterisk, I am. Asterisk, did this boy approach you for permission? She shifted uncomfortably. He did, but we'd already reported the damage to the mural. There was no budget to restore it properly. I didn't think he could really help. Asterisk, Whittaker regarded Eli again. So you took it upon yourself to fix something everyone else had given up. Eli nodded. The judge exhaled, his gaze softening a fraction. Asterisk, you understand you still broke the law. Asterisk, I know. Eli whispered. I'm sorry. He meant it. Anyone could see that. Whittaker turned to Miss Grayson. Asterisk, has this child ever been in trouble before? Asterisk, no, Your Honor. Asterisk, has he shown any other unusual aptitudes? She hesitated, then unfolded another paper. This is a letter from Eli's math teacher. He tested in the top percentile for spatial reasoning and pattern recognition. His teachers think he could qualify for advanced programs if his family could afford the application fees. Asterisk, silence fell over the courtroom like a heavy quilt. Whittaker read the letter twice. Something gnawed at him, a memory he did not welcome, the face of his own father the day he'd thrown away a sketchbook. Asterisk, you think you're special, his father had sneered. You'll never be anything but a burden. He cleared his throat, approached the bench. Asterisk, Eli stepped forward, every movement tentative. He looked up, expecting another rebuke. Instead, Whitaker lowered his voice. I won't pretend what you did was correct, but neither will I pretend you're ordinary. You have a gift, young man. Do you understand that? Asterisk. Eli nodded, tears brimming. Asterisk. If you promise me you will never again take it upon yourself to damage property, no matter how noble your intentions, I will suspend this sentence. Eli's breath caught. You mean I don't have to go to juvie? Asterisk. You do not, Whitaker said, his voice a shade gentler. But I want your word. I promise, Eli whispered. Whitaker raised his gavel. Asterisk. Sentence suspended. Charges dismissed, contingent on completion of community service and enrollment in a structured art program. There was a stunned silence. Then, all at once, people began to clap. Not all of them. Some still thought the boy was a delinquent, but enough. Eli turned to his mother, who had her face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking with relief. Ms. Grayson squeezed Eli's shoulder. I'll help you find a program, she whispered. Asterisk. The judge stood, gathering his papers. Just before he retreated to his chamber, he paused and looked back one last time. Asterisk. You may think you are poor, he said to Eli, but in the only way that matters. You are richer than most of us. Outside the courthouse, the July air was thick with heat. Reporters were waiting. Someone had tipped them off about the graffiti trial. A young journalist approached Eli and his mother. Asterisk. Can I ask what you plan to do now? Asterisk. Eli glanced at his mom, who nodded. Asterisk. I want to learn, he said simply. I want to get better. Asterisk. Better at what? He hesitated, searching for words big enough to hold his hopes. At showing people the way I see things, he said, the way they could be. Asterisk. A week later, Ms. Grayson helped Eli enroll in a free Saturday art program run by a retired painter named Mr. Harlan. On the first day, Eli was so nervous he could barely hold a pencil. Mr. Harlan watched him for a long time before he spoke. Me see your sketchbook. Asterisk. Eli handed it over, tattered, every inch covered with elaborate designs. Harlan flipped page after page, his expression unreadable. Asterisk. At last, he looked up. Asterisk. You don't need me to teach you how to draw, he said. You already know. What you need is permission to believe it matters. Eli stared, not understanding. Harlan placed the sketchbook gently back in his hands. Asterisk. You're not here to learn, you have talent. You're here to learn, you deserve to use it. 3 years passed. The mural Eli had tried to restore was eventually repainted, but a section of the wall was left blank, an empty panel in the corner. Asterisk. One Saturday morning, Eli was invited back to the library. He was taller now, his face sharper with adolescence. He carried a portfolio of work under his arm. The librarian greeted him at the door. We've been saving this space, she said, gesturing to the empty panel. For you. His heart thumped so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. They handed him a tray of fresh paints. It took him 2 weeks to finish. When he was done, the mural was not just restored, it was transformed. The original images of the town's history were there, but so were new figures. Children reading under trees, elders teaching skills, mothers cradling babies, fathers planting seeds, all of them woven together by bright, intricate patterns of vines and stars and ribbons of color. Asterisk. At the bottom, he signed his name in careful, deliberate letters. Eli Carter, artist. On opening day, Judge Whitaker came to see it. His hair had gone grayer, and he walked with a cane now. But his eyes were still sharp. He studied the mural for a long time without speaking. Asterisk. When he finally turned to Eli, he held out a hand. Asterisk. You proved me wrong, the judge said, voice husky. I'm glad you did. Eli shook his hand, feeling something in his chest unlock. Asterisk. Years later, long after Eli had won scholarships and moved to the city to study fine arts, a reporter asked him to describe the moment he knew he was an artist. Asterisk. He didn't have to think about it. Asterisk. It was the day someone told me my work didn't belong, he said, and the day someone else told me it did. Asterisk. The reporter asked him what advice he would give kids like him, poor, overlooked, one bad decision away from being discarded.